All right. What's up, everybody? This is Sam Callahan from Callahan Training Group here with another episode of the CTG podcast. This week, I want to be talking about a subject that's kind of close to me, tight budget training. I call it budget because everybody's got different budgets, right? When I talk about budgets, obviously the first thing everybody thinks about is trying to save some money. I agree, but let's say you're Jeff Bezos, let's say you're Elon Musk, and that doesn't matter. Those guys have a tighter budget in time, right? So I want you guys to think, hey, even if I've got infinite funds, infinite range time, infinite bullets, whatever, I have a set amount of time that I can spend training. I want to get better, faster, obviously be more efficient. And I can't spend all the time away from my wife and kids, So I like to think about budgeting not only my money, but my time. Now, budgeting we'll call it actually my muscles, right? Like you're going to get tired after a while. You're going to start getting crappy reps. So I think of all of this as just efficient training. Now, practical shooting is a game of efficiency, is it not? That's what it is. It's a game of efficiency. It's a game of how much more efficient can I be than my competitor? So why shouldn't your training be the same? So I use the same approach to my training. I don't want to try harder than the next guy in a stage. I want to have a more efficient plan. And so be it. If I need some effort, that's fine. That's part of my plan. But I'm not going to try to prove how tough I am or how awesome I am. I'm just going to have a more efficient plan, and I'm going to let the work speak for itself. So I like that attitude of dry fire training. Now, before I go into the attitude of why this training is my guiding light, first of all, I like to kind of talk about why I got into this in general. USPSA didn't even start for me as the first sport. It was 3-gun, and I got into it because it was the most efficient way to get good with the guns I was playing with. I was a shotgunner, so when I picked up rifles and pistols when I was like 19, 20, I just wanted to train the same way that I was training with shotguns. We shot sporting clays because I was a hunter. The best way to never miss a bird was to shoot at clays that are twice as hard. I'm like, all right, cool, easy concept. We got good at clays. Well, when I started building other guns, I wanted to do the same thing. I saw Jerry Mikulak throwing 3 guns around, and I'm like, all right, that seems like a pretty efficient way to practice, right? So I got into the whole efficiency of practice thing. Now, when I was doing that, I was a machinist. I wasn't a full-time shooter. At my old job, I was on a farm, so I had a range out back. I had infinite time and infinite space in my budget to train. And what I realized that even with infinite time and infinite space and the ability to shoot every single day like I was doing, it wasn't as fruitful as just practicing meaningfully with the budget. Meaning I'm going to allow myself a certain amount of rounds, a certain amount of reps to do something or accomplish a task. And if I don't accomplish it, that's fine. I'm going to assess why. If I do, great, I can start to budget for the next task, right? And I started to realize right there, oh, okay, just because I have infinite range time, just because I could shoot every single day, this is in 2016, so 9mm I was buying from a buddy for 7 cents a round. I could just shoot infinitely almost. I had a machinist job too, so I had a good job. I could just buy ammo and shoot if I wanted to. I shoot Glocks, I could just hammer rounds. I was wasting rounds is what I found. So I took one of my first classes with Kita, and that started with my whole efficiency and training thing, because while we shot a lot over 2 days, every single block had a topic that we were going over, a subject that we were actually working towards, some kind of metric to see if you're getting closer or further from the subject, and then wrap up, move on. And the next thing generally built up off of the last thing, right? So it seemed like a more efficient way to train. And that's what kind of started my path and all this stuff, right? So I figured, well, let's do dedicated, focused reps instead of just going and shooting every day, instead of just sitting in my TV like I was doing and dry firing at Jim from the Office for 45 minutes. I just figured going through the motions would be a good thing rather than not going through the motions. And while that's correct, like if you pick your gun up and pretend rather than not pick your gun up, it's a good thing. But I realized that the non-focus, just like shooting randomly and watching The Office or listening to whatever podcast, it wasn't helping me train for what I was trying to train for, which is performance shooting. So I started realizing, all right, let me set myself 15 minutes a day, every single day, of a dedicated focused rep, right? I'm going to really focus on a specific subject. Today is going to be grip. Today is going to be vision. Today is going to be manipulations, right? Whatever it is, I'm going to have a singular focused topic. I'm going to dedicate 15 minutes of trying to make my eyes and brain tired before my hands and my body get tired, right? Ironically, Ben Stoker, I think yesterday or the day before, just posted exactly on this, that it's better to do dedicated focus reps than to just voluminously shoot, right? So that's been a big part of my attitude and what I teach to my people and what I try to hand over to everybody is everybody thinks dry fire every day is a exaggeration. And it's really not. It's you have to understand that what we're trying to do here is efficiency. Efficiency means you're pretty consistent. Consistency is from practicing consistently, and dry firing 15 minutes a day is the consistency you need to build. And it's not going to be bingo, here we go. I figured it out today. Tomorrow I'm faster. Tomorrow I'm faster. Tomorrow I'm faster. It's a process. And if you get in the process and you focus on the process rather than the actual results, that'll be a pretty big deal for you. And we'll talk about that. But so frequency over volume was my big deal. If you wanted to shoot more than 15 minutes a day, shoot 10 minutes a day, twice a day. You get better reps out of it. It's just from what I found too, talking to like the competitors, how often do you shoot or how long are you shooting during a competition, right? A 5-stage local match, even if you shoot 30 seconds per stage, that's under 3 minutes to shoot. If you go to a major match, you're not shooting for more than 5 minutes total accumulated time. So if you're dry firing for 35, 40 minutes at a time, it's not a bad thing to overload your training, but I like 150, 200% loading. I don't need to go further than that. I use gym principles. I'm not trying to deadlift 1,000 pounds if my job is to pick up 200. I might deadlift 500 pounds, but that's a different topic. I just like to think, hey, I would rather hammer something and have some data in my head that I can really chew on and really analyze, 10, 15 minutes worth of data, and then come back tomorrow with a singular focus of something I can change. So that's a big deal for me is singular focuses, right? So how do you then measure singular focuses? Well, that's why timers are very important. And that's why I think there's very few things you need to actually purchase to get better at the performance shooting side, but you need a timer. You're going to need a timer because first and foremost, even if you're not measuring clicks on the timer, because every timer other than Shooters Global, you can't measure your dry fire, right? I use the Shooters Global timer all the time now because in dry fire, it actually in smart mode, here's my clicks, it hears my manipulations, and I can, in dry fire, get true data. But even if I'm not getting true data, even if you're just going off a random beep, I like people to start going off a beep because that's what happens. You go when you're not ready. Somebody else tells you when to go. It's a timer. Sometimes it's a fight, whatever you want to quantify it as. I want you to think, hey, I got to go when I'm not ready, when I'm not ready, when I'm not ready. And you start building a reactive stimulus to a beep or whatever it is to go. And it's not panic. It's just go. Just go. Just go. Just go. And as you do your repetitions, you start to have a focus on, I need to do this, not, oh no, go. Timers are very important to start to get you over that fight or flight response of here we go, right? So other than that, you do need metrics. You need benchmarks, and that's a big thing. You need benchmarks, and hey, if I'm going to set a draw benchmark for myself, I want to use par times. If I want to hit a 1 second draw, I'm going to set my 1 second par time, and I might draw and shoot an entire array, but I want to make sure that first shot is indeed at that benchmark that I'm looking for, right? But why expand an entire array if you haven't simply addressed the one thing? That's where singular focus comes in. If I want to focus on getting a sub-second draw, why would I try to shoot an El Presidente array? That's a bunch of things to focus on instead of my singular focus of a draw, right? Or better yet, what if I just want to focus on grip? Why even draw my gun? You might just start low ready and just grip your gun in and just grip your gun in and grip your gun in and over and in over, in over reload grip. And now you're more focused on the topic at hand rather than trying to beat a drill or do a whole bunch of things at once. And your brain doesn't really have the space to then report back to you. How did that rep go? How did that singular focus go? How did that topic go, right? So now when you're doing these singular focuses, it's important to then randomize what you're shooting. So I always use the topic of grip when I'm talking about this because it's an infinite topic. But let's just say I'm working on my grip today. Where my shoulders, where my lats, where my hands, that's fine, right? At the end of every rep, I want to actually assess how did it go? Was it good? Was it bad? Could it be better, right? But the array in front of me, if I keep hammering the same 3-target array, left to right, 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 I'm going to get better by virtue of repetition, not virtue of mastery of the subject. So I actually like to say, hey, if you got 3 targets in front of you, shoot it left to right, then right to left, then center right left, then center left, and onward and onward and onward, and shoot it in whatever amount of different combinations you possibly can, so that you're working on the subject matter and the topic therein. You're not trying to master a classifier, say. So I always love that topic. Why would I not practice classifiers, or why would I practice classifiers? I don't want you to go out there and try to master El Presidente. That's not the point. I want you to go use El Presidente to master a turn and draw, to master transitions, to master reload back to transitions again. If you have all those topics mastered, well, then you will be good at El Presidente. If you're good at El Presidente, it doesn't mean you'll actually be able to go shoot everything else. So I use the classifiers more as a random challenge that, hey, today you're going to be asked to do a turn and draw, a transition, and a reload. All right, cool. Let's go. Let's see. So I'll burn some reps, right? What I generally like to do is simple stuff first, and then build it in, and then build it in, and then build it in, right? So for El Presidente, I'm going to just simply work the first thing, just a turn and draw. All right, turn and draw, turn and draw. Do I have that down? All right, can I turn and draw to any target? Cool. All right, what's the next thing in El Presidente? It's just transition, transition. Okay, so on the beep, I'm just going to transition, transition. All right, transition, transition. All right, transition, transition. I can do that. That feels good. All right, next thing I'm going to work on is I'm just going to think about shot, reload, shot. Why? Because that's the next part of El Presidente. So if I can work all these metrics and I can work all these things, at the end, I'll just put them together. I'll just use the beep as my stimulus, and I'll just go. So I would rather talk about dry fire in terms of focused 15 minutes of repetition with a singular goal, and then being able to report back even bad. Hey, that went terribly today. Fine, that's okay. Let's take the emotion out of it. Why? Why'd it go bad? And then instead of bad, let's go, well, why are we going to work on something? How are we going to make this better? What was the lowest hanging fruit on that tree we could pick? And how do we then make it better for next time, right? Very simple. So I mentioned I have a timer in dry fire. The only other gimmicks that I really go into is I hate lasers. I hate anything that makes you depend on a third-party verification of your shots. I want you calling shots. I want you being able to tell me based on what I saw that was good or bad. Tim Herron does this fantastically. Steve Anderson does this fantastically. Tom Castro teaches this. They all have slightly different tweaks on what they're, or how they'll call their shots. But the subject matter is the moment the gun goes boom, where'd that shot go based on what you saw, what you felt, right? That's how I want you to get into dry fire. So what does that mean? Don't get into visual stimulus. Don't get into a laser. Don't get into a mantis. Don't get into whatever stuff's out there. Depend on what you're feeling and seeing, and then go to live fire to, we'll say, either pass or fail yourself, right? To go verify what you're doing. Use live fire. Don't use a laser. The only other things I recommend people buying out there are dry fire mags. Dry fire mags, if you have a striker fire, is wonderful, because now I'm not just pretending to pull the trigger, or worse, just mashing, mashing, mashing. You get some resistance, you get the feel of a prep and then a break on a striker fire. So you understand the building of pressure and breaking of pressure without changing your grip and everything getting all janky and everything getting all weird. People get too wrapped up around it doesn't feel exactly like my competition trigger. It's not the point. The point is to give you a stimulus of prep, break, reset, step, prep, break, reset, prep, break, reset. If you could do that on a dry fire mag, you'll be able to do it on your competition gun. Trust me. It'll also help you build your grip around too. But the other, we'll say, thing that I use is not a thing at all. It's called Dry Fire King. It is a YouTube series that you pop on your wall, you pop on your smart TV, you pop on your computer, you stand 4-6 feet away from the computer, and you run whatever array pops up in his playlist that day. So I mentioned I do random arrays, and I'll randomize the arrays too. That's why I like Dry Fire King. Typically his videos are 10 to 15 minutes long. So there's that magic dry fire window, right? And in there, he'll typically give you 3 to 5 different presentations. You'll get a couple reps at each presentation, next presentation, couple reps, next presentation. So you can stay focused on the grip or the thing that you're working on, but the presentations change. You don't have to change. You don't have to make decisions. You run this one 5 or 6 times, run it backwards. When it changes, well, there's a new one. All right, run this one, run this one, run this one. When this is over, okay, we'll do another one. If you need more, put a target on the wall to your right. And now you have different planes of focus to shoot on. So I think that's a big thing in dry fire as well, is even if you're using just scaled targets, don't put them on one wall because your eyes aren't shifting focus, right? They're staying on one singular plane of focus. I'd rather you take two full-size targets and put one at the end of your hallway and one in the door frame right up close to you. So you go from what looks like a 2-yard to a 10-yard transition. That actually forces your eyes to do what they would do in real life. And now you're not going through the motions of the dry fire anymore. You're really getting some value in, well, if I'm going to work on transition far to close, close to far, I need to work on my eyes, picking small spots and shifting between. So there we go. I'm not going to stare at two things on a wall, one small, one big. That doesn't really translate. So different focal planes, different focuses, no gimmicks needed, no things needed really. You need your gear, you need a timer. If you can get a dry fire mag, that's great. If you have a hammer fired gun, you don't need it. If you can shoot at scaled targets with dry fire king, even better, right? All of the stuff is very much like bare minimum. You probably have a smart TV, so you have dry fire king. You should have a belt and holster, so you have the ability to sit there and dry fire, right? You have all the things you need to really practice well. So then when we go to live fire, this is where the tight budget training shows itself a lot more, right? In dry fire, if I'm 15 minutes a day, every day, I'm not feeling it in my wallet and I'm not seeing holes in paper yet. So I'm not quantifying things yet. But in 15 minutes a day, every day, you'll start to see things feel easier, feel more natural. Now, when you go to your live fire, it's the same principles. I don't want you to go out there and be like, I'm going to go shoot 500 rounds today, unless you have a prescribed thing to do with each one of those rounds, right? Generally, when you start thinking purpose-driven training and you start assigning reps and value to each round, you'll start understanding that at around 200, 300 rounds, I should have gotten this by now, or I should go home and work on it. There isn't going to be a time that I should sit on the range and shoot 1,000 rounds unless you're breaking something in, working on a new principle. There's always exceptions to the rule, but for the general person, for efficiency and training, for your budget, for your time, you should go out and shoot, I don't know, 200, 300 focus rounds a week if you can manage that, right? 100 if you can, bare minimum, 100 if you can. I'll go into that ratio, right? All you're trying to do is test what you were working on in dry fire. So if all week on dry fire, you're working on my visual speed and I'm working on my grip, and then I was working on my manipulations, well, I'll go back to El Presidente. That's all those things, right? I'm working on getting a good grip for 2, 4, 6 shots. I'm working on my manipulations and my reload. My eyes better be whipping my head around for my turn and draw. I better be getting in front of my gun for my transitions. So there's all those principles, right? Pretty simple setup too. 3 targets out in front of you. You could even scale that down if you have limited space. You could use scaled targets. You could make it appear smaller and you could just work those simple things, right? It should still be a pretty simple build though, is I don't want you to go out there and just start hammering it and see how fast I can go. Go out there and run it cold 3 or 4 times and see what my benchmark's at right now. And I like that word benchmark because that's where I want you to start talking. What are my benchmarks? We'll call it my sterile benchmarks actually coming out in my performance here. So if you run El Presidente a couple times, hold, note your timer. What is my turn and draw? What are my splits generally? What's my transition? What's my shot, reload, shot? All right, that's all the metrics you really need to know in El Presidente. Well, after I run it 3 or 4 times live, I'll get an idea of about where my averages are. And then I can go and work, well, let me go get a benchmark on what my turn and draw is right now. Let me do 20, 30 reps of a turn and draw and see, hey, what's the best I can do, turn, draw, and take 2 shots on that first target. Well, there's my benchmark. I know that's what I'm capable of. If 10 times out of 10, I can turn, draw, and hit that target in 1 second, well, then I got it. I know I have it in my body. It's not a circus trick. It's not some novelty. I've mastered the concept of turn and draw and shoot too. All right, well, if that's mastered, then I might just stand still, start on the first target, and on the beep, shoot 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and shoot that El Presidente array. All right, well, that means I'm working on my transitions. If I have that, I'll check my timer, and I'll be like, all right, my average split is X, my average transition is Y. All right, write that down. All right, next drill. Beep, shot, reload, 1, 2. Why do I take 2 shots? I want to make sure that I'm actually gripping my gun and getting 2 good shots. I'm not just going 1, reload, 1. But that principle says, hey, I know I can take a shot, reload, regrip my gun, and take 2 accurate shots in this amount of time. And that metric 10 times out of 10 times is an average of this time. All right, cool. So now I have I will call it my theoretical El Presidente. My turn and draw is 1 second. My splits are 20s. My transitions are 25s. My reload is 1 second. All right, we can start doing math in there. And this should only take me 4 seconds. So if I turn, draw, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, reload, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I look at my timer and it's, I don't know, 5.5 seconds. I get to go in there and say, well, if my benchmark for my turn and draw was X, it happened in the exact same time. Well, guess what? My turn and draw, I got it. It's not that I will stop practicing it, but it's there. Well, what I've realized is maybe the time that didn't match. My live El Presidente shot reload shot time was actually 2 seconds. When I was practicing it, it was about 1.5 seconds. All right, so right there. Do I need to run El Presidente 1,000 more times? No, we could be super efficient now. I know my turn and draw is generally good. My splits and transitions are generally okay. All right, what do I need to work on? I need to work on my shot, reload, shot, shot. Shot, reload, shot, shot. Shot, reload, shot, shot. If I get that down to 1 second, boom, I'm in there. So then it's simple. You build up, you build up, you build up. You can identify the little deficiencies in your training and then work backwards into them. So that's what I like to talk about, deficit training and deficit drills. This is how you can really maximize your live fire by using dry fire. And this freaks people out because I'm basically saying dry fire with a loaded live gun, but you're on the range. You're shooting drills live. What we're doing, the deficit is I'm taking shots away from the drill. So in the example I was just giving, El Presidente, let's say for continuation of my example, we're turning and drawing 2, 4, 6, reload 2, 4, 6. And all of my metrics except the turn and draw were good. And we want to work on them. And now I think I got them, right? I did 10 reps of it. I'm like, man, my turn and draw is snappy now. I got it. All right, my transitions are snappy now. Got it. All right. I finally fixed that shot, reload, shot. I fixed it, I think. So what I'll do is I'll add it back into the drill, but only that will be shot. So let me explain this. Now, I don't want to stand there and just sterilely go 1, reload, 1, 2, and then take that directly into turn, draw, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, reload, 1, 2. That's too much to mentally manage at first. What I like to do is if I have my shot, reload, 1, 2, all I'm going to do is that part of the drill, but I'm going to dry fire the rest of the drill. So that means in El Presidente, I'm going to start facing up range. I'm going to have my wrist above belt. On the beep, I'm going to turn, draw. I'm going to prep my trigger at the first target, prep my trigger at the second target, prep my trigger at the third target, and only break it on the third target. Do my reload, take my double, which would signify shots 7 and 8, and then dry fire the other 2 targets. So all I've done is shoot shots number, let's see, 6, reload, 7, and 8. So I've executed the entirety of El Presidente, and I'll even do it on my par time. If I'm working on for a 3.5 second par time, I'm going to hold that 3.5 second par time. I'm going to set it to my timer. And the only thing I then have to mentally manage is how well or how poorly did that shot, reload, shot, shot go? Well, that's pretty easy to manage. My timer will manage the rest. My timer will tell me exactly everything I need to know, right? Did I finish under the drill? Did I see everything I needed to see? Well, that's up to me. So the only thing I need to manage now is that little skill. And guess what? If I can do that and I can plug it back into El Presidente deficit style, I'll add back more shots, but not all the shots. So I might turn and draw, dry fire, dry fire, dry fire, dry fire, live, reload, live. So I'm only really going to focus on the shot, reload, continuation of the drill. I'm not worried about turn and draw speed. I'm not worried about everything else. But if I can slowly build it up, I'll just keep adding shots back in until I'm doing all 12 shots, until everything's there again. And I'm not trying to just sit there and hammer 6, reload, 6, 6, reload, 6, 6, reload, 6. You're really focusing on what matters, but it takes a little bit of discipline. It takes some stop, pull the timer out, write some metrics down, do some comparison, take a breath. It's fun to shoot guns. It's fun to make noise. It's fun to do doubles. So it's hard to sometimes like back off and identify, but it should be very simple. If you're working on your grip that day, take it simple, man. It should just be a single. See if the gun returns. Doubles, double. Can I do a bill drill? Can I do a 6, reload, 6? I don't need to really get crazy. I just need to know what all those metrics are and keep writing them down, keep tracking them, and then adding them into other things. I don't need to try to do a 2, reload, 2 drill at the fastest I've ever done if I can't then add it into El Presidente. If my 2, reload, 2 is like sub 2 second, like everybody's doing on Instagram, but I go do El Presidente and it's not sub 2 seconds, then it's just a circus trick. And I don't really care about circus tricks because circus tricks don't work at matches. It's a simple fact. So I like this whole mastery over novelty idea, right? All this training is thinking about efficiency. So we're being efficient towards a goal. We're not being efficient towards like some random just metric that's on YouTube, right? So that tells me, well, what is efficient as far as time invested and bullets invested? I like the 7-to-1 or 7-to-2 ratio, live to dry to live. It's got to be bare minimum 7 days of dry fire. I know it's 7 days, every day a week of dry fire, 1 day live. It's got to be like that. You have to at least 1 day live go out and test what you're doing in dry fire. Because if you're doing months of dry fire and you're not testing what you're doing, you could be going down a wrong path. You could be working on stuff. You could be lying to yourself, right? You got to do your dry fire for 7 days, wake up and do it on the 7th day, and then go to the range that day and just test it out. Test what I was doing this week. Keep it simple so that you can be more focused in your live fire. Keep it simple in your live fire, in your dry fire, so that your live fire is more focused, right? Don't try to work on everything all at once, all over the place, because then what the hell are you going to do? What are you going to measure? What are you going to work on? I like to say maximum 7-to-2 is great, meaning everyday dry fire, that never changes, but 2 days live is great. If you can get 2 days live a week, that's awesome. You're never going to really need much more than that unless you have a deadline, unless you're like, I need to really shoot a certain amount of rounds for this match upcoming and I haven't been shooting a lot. That's a different subject. We're talking just efficiency. The average guy who's just trying to train every day to be better than the next day, better than the last day. So with that live day, when I say 7-to-1, that live day, that can be a match. And this is a point of contention for a lot of people. Your only practice shouldn't be a match. I agree. But I just told you I'm going to dry fire 7 days a week. So I am practicing. And I'm focusing really hard in that dry fire. I have singular focuses. I have metrics. I'm doing stuff. I'm not just waving my gun around. Okay. So if I'm practicing all week and then I use my match to kind of tell on myself, you could use the match as long as you're not going to the match to send it and just be Captain Speedo and be the raw time champion of the day. If you go to the match and just shoot with focus and then report on yourself, hey, that went good, that went bad, use your hat cam, use your third person footage, not for Instagram, but for self-coaching and self-management. Or guess what? You could send it to a coach. We do take online coaching. You can then use the match to break down, what did I dry fire this week? How did it go? Did it get better? And now what do I need to focus on? Because if you dry fired all week, say a sub-second draw, and then all 6 of your local match stages were sub-second draws, well, maybe do you need to dedicate all that focus and draws anymore? No, maybe focus it somewhere else, right? Well, if I've been focusing on my draw and I go to my match and it wasn't good, well, maybe I need to reassess my dry fire, right? It's not that the match is at fault. It's that I didn't do my job to make this skill subconscious enough to do it under pressure with people watching and all that kind of stuff, right? So I actually think a match is a better example of, did I actually train this efficiently? Because there's pressure. You're not on your range by yourself. You're not going to get it right the 10th time and lie to yourself. I mean, even if you have buddies behind you watching and it's not really for anything, there's very little amount of pressure on you. So I think the match is a good way to actually test, is this subconscious? So very little of us can shoot more than a match a week. So generally the 7-to-2 ratio means dry fire every day, live fire 1 day a week, like go to the range 1 day after work and spend an hour doing some doubles, doing some vision work, doing some grip work. And then on Sunday, go shoot your match, get your metrics. Now I know it might be a pain in the ass, but after the stage is over, just ask the guy who was running the timer, hey, what was my first shot? Cool, thanks. Just keep track of it. You don't need to, it's not for you to brag about. It's not for a talking point. It's just like, I just want to know, like, that target was 8 feet away from me. It better have been a second draw. Okay, it was a second draw. Good to know. Well, if it wasn't, you can now get your metrics. You can get metrics out of the match, right? Now, there are some apps out there that you can actually upload your match video to, and it'll tell you based on when the beep started in your first shot, it'll time it for you, and you can upload match videos and you can get your metrics. And you could say, hey, my average draw, my average transition, my average split, my average reload. Oh, there you go. Now, does this take a little bit of analyticals? Yeah, it does. Is it not glorious for Instagram? It's not. This isn't just every day posting highlight reels and the best of the best. This is a lot of analyzing, a lot of other stuff, but that's actually where the efficiency comes in here. If you're dedicating, and I'm going to really hammer this home, if you're dedicating more time to your social media posting than you are to your actual process and training, you're wrong. You're 100% wrong. I have a lot of stupid media and a lot of stuff because my job is shooting, and I shoot every day and I do this every day. So I have a lot of compiled media. So I post it a lot. Don't get me wrong, but I'm focused on the process to the point where I now have to hire people to get media because I'm so focused on teaching the class or training that I just won't touch my phone. So you're going to need to really think about, this isn't for the glory, this is for the process, right? Now, I have this big thing that I have to beat to a lot of my students where I'm a grandmaster shooter. I made 3 divisions of grandmaster in 1 season, basically, in like a couple months. Now, when I say it like that, it sounds like, oh man, that happened fast. Like, yeah, I got all the grandmaster cards relatively quickly, like to each other, but I was shooting for like 8 years until I got my first jam card. It took a lot of inefficient training and then fixing it, and inefficient training and fixing it, and realizing simple is better to get to the point where I'm at. Now, the point I'm trying to make is don't rush. There is no time limit I put on what I was doing. There was no, this isn't fast enough or this is too fast. There was none of that. Take the emotion out of it, take the measurement out of it, and replace that with just the work. My whole thing is, if you can just focus on the process instead of the results, you get the results you need. Just like a match. If you go into a match and you focus on the process of how I'm going to analyze each stage and shoot it well, that goes pretty well. If you show up to a match and you go, I'm going to go fast, doesn't work. Just doesn't work. So it's the same thing with your whole process here, is don't focus on the results, focus on the process, focus on the input, focus on the input. The output will be good if you focus on good input. It's that simple. Simple isn't easy. You'll hear me say that a million times, but it's simple. It's very simple. It takes discipline. It just takes focus. That's all. Some people will get there quickly. Now, the younger you are, the quicker it seems to happen. That's just a elasticity of human brains. I'm sorry, but if you're 16 and you get into this, your brain's really moldable. I can make you really good, really fast. If you're above 27, your brain starts to turn to concrete. If you're above like 35, I've coached a lot of athletes from the CrossFit side of things. It's hard to change motor patterns and mental and all those kinds of muscle memory patterns the older we get, right? So it might take some more focus as you get older. Funny enough, it's harder for people who have been shooting for longer periods of time to make changes like this. So if you've been shooting for 20 years and you just got into USPSA, it might take you longer to relearn something than somebody who is learning their draw for the first time. They don't have old reps to replace. They don't have old habits to replace. So don't compare yourself to others unless you're going to the match and you're looking at results about how can I chase this guy down, right? Results are the only thing, and it's not emotional. It's just going, hey, if I got beat by 1 second, where in this stage could I try to make 1 second appear? We all want to go faster, but where can I get a little bit of value back, right? Where can I think about being more efficient in this stage rather than thinking about the result of going fast? Where could I have input better efficiency, right? So again, this all goes back to kind of a internal battle. It's don't rush, be very analytical, simple focuses, and just kind of plug along at all the little simple things here. Steve Anderson put it beautifully. He's got a book on dry fire that has identified 12 things that you need to work on. Sounds simple. Simple isn't easy, but it's simple. You just need to work on presenting your gun, reloading your gun, transitioning your gun. There's not a lot of subject matters, but the whole theory of this is I need to be efficient at all of them. I need to master all of them so that I can use any one of them at any combination in a stage or in a match or whatever I need without thinking about it, without trying too hard, right? I'm not trying to flex my way through problems. I want it to just happen. If you ever watch somebody do jujitsu from a really high level, they'll be smiling and just choking people and bending arms backwards and just, yeah, whatever, man. That's what I want it to be. Catch JJ Ricazzo when he's coming off the stage. He's not all juiced up and jacked up. He is cool, man. He'll win a stage. People will be clapping for him. And he'll be like, yeah, man, I just did my job. I saw my spots. As simple as that. You shouldn't be making your job harder. You should try to make it efficient and just depend on the tools that you built around your dry fire and live fire. So these principles have guided me through my training. I've had to do a lot of wrong things to get to the right way of things. And the right way of things showed its head. Like I mentioned, I made GM in what I'll say is over a winter. I changed my dry fire habits to exactly what I just explained to you. Keep it simple, simple focus, 15 minutes a day, live fire once a week. I did all these things I told you, and I took the 8 years of weird, inefficient training, and all of a sudden, my first match, I came out from the winter. I hadn't shot from November to March, not a single live round other than some indoor stuff. It was just a personal goal of mine. Don't take that for anything else. It was just a personal goal of mine is I'm only going to dry fire till my next match. I want to see if it makes a difference. Showed up to my next match. What do you know? There's a classifier in the second stage. Shot my first stage, went pretty well. Go over to the classifier. Sam, you're up first. All right, let's go. Let's see what happens. Well, I'm up first. Let me just shoot the speed of sight. I'm just going to shoot comfortably, target focused. I'm just going to do whatever my dot tells me to do. Shot it, did my little calculator because I didn't feel great about it. I had great shots out there, but I didn't feel like, woo, I didn't feel like I was flexing. Oh, whoa, it's 101%. That's weird. Wait, so if I just calm down and shoot with intentional focus and I had good training, good efficient training, I can just depend on that happening. And then every classifier that popped up from there on, I was like, oh, wait, I am a grandmaster. Why? Because I've trained, not because I have to try, because I've earned this. Oh, all right. And it became easy to then perform when you can depend on these little simple things, right? So that's where I'm at now. I wouldn't ask you guys or tell you guys to do anything that I don't actively do. And guess what? If things change, I'll make a new video. If there's new things out there, I'll change. I used to train differently 5 years ago than I do now. And in 5 more years, I'm sure things will be different again. We're out here just trying to do the best of the best. I like comparing myself to the best shooters out there because why would you not? So thanks guys for listening. If you have any topics that you'd like to hear from here on out, please drop a message, drop any kind of line, whatever you'd like to hear. Thank you guys for listening and staying along with me here. I'm going to try to keep up with the weekly stuff. And thank you guys for generally being patient with my start to the podcast here. I know we're going to get a little bit more steam here. I'm going to get a nicer camera. I'm going to, get a nicer background. We're going to have some guests on soon. So stay tuned. I am looking forward to this 2024 season. There's a lot of stuff coming. Have a great day, guys. Keep dry firing.